Good evening. According to the most recent news from the South Australian Outback, authorities have resumed and expanded their search for 4-year-old Augustus Gus Lamont, nearly 3 weeks after he vanished from his family's remote homestead near Yunta. A newly formed unit, Taskforce Horizon, is now leading the investigation, coordinating police and Australian Defence Force personnel as they push into areas previously unsearched. So far, 18 police officers, 82 ADF members, 33 vehicles, drones, all-terrain vehicles, and spatial analysis teams have been deployed. Critically, South Australia Police emphasise there is no evidence at this time of foul play. The leading hypothesis remains that Gus may have wandered off, perhaps disoriented in the harsh terrain. Yet the challenges are stark. Over 470 square kilometres of rugged open country have already been combed with no confirmed trace of Gus. One earlier lead, a small boot print discovered near a dam, was later ruled not to be connected to Gus. As the renewed search presses forward, experts are weighing theories. Did he simply wander further than expected? Could wildlife or environmental risk factors be involved? Or is there a possibility, however remote, of third-party intervention? Tonight, we begin a comprehensive look at the disappearance of Gus Lamont. From that fateful day to the evolving investigation, the theories in play, and the search for answers in one of Australia's most haunting missing child cases. Before we begin, I want to know what you think. Could a child really vanish without a trace in a place so open, so empty, that you can see the horizon for miles? Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more verified true crime stories from Australia's most haunting cases. The Lamont family lived on Oak Park Station, a vast, remote sheep-grazing property in South Australia, located about 40 kilometres south of Yunta, roughly 275 kilometres northeast of Adelaide. Oak Park is not a suburban block. It is expansive, isolated land, stretched by red earth, sparse scrub, and rolling dunes. The climate is harsh, heat by day, dust storms, arid winds, minimal shade. In this setting, a young child playing near the homestead would be surrounded by open terrain, limited visual markers, and an unforgiving landscape that reveals few signs of life. Gus lived at that homestead with his mother, his 1-year-old brother Ronnie, and his grandparents, all of whom remained cooperative and supportive throughout the search. On Saturday, 27th of September 2025, at approximately 5 o'clock p.m., Adelaide time, young Augustus Gus Lamont was seen by his grandmother playing outside on a mound of dirt near the family's homestead on Oak Park Station. By 5:30 p.m., the grandmother came out to call him in. But Gus was nowhere to be found. The family searched on foot for about 3 hours on that evening before contacting the police. When the emergency call was made, authorities understood the gravity. A 4-year-old missing in remote terrain at dusk, in a region with minimal infrastructure. From the start, responders faced daunting odds, in an environment where even discerning footprints or subtle signs can vanish quickly under wind, heat, or shifting sands. That moment, when a child seen playing becomes a child no longer present, is where the search and all its complexities begin. Within hours of Gus's disappearance, the local community responded. Neighbors, family friends, and volunteers from surrounding towns rushed to Oak Park Station to help sweep nearby paddocks, fence lines, and creek beds. Retired SES, State Emergency Service, personnel, ATV owners familiar with the land, and even Aboriginal trackers joined the grassroots effort. See references, news.com.au, independent. Despite the remoteness of the region, people came from towns like Yunta and Peterborough in the mid-north, some walking hours over red dust roads, to lend their knowledge of the land and aid in the early searches. By early October, what began as a local search had become one of South Australia's largest mobilizations for a missing child. On 14 October 2025, police confirmed that 82 Australian Defence Force, ADF personnel, and 18 police officers, along with 33 vehicles, were deployed in renewed sweeping operations. The operation employed advanced tools, drones fitted with infrared and thermal imaging, helicopter overflights, polar utility terrain vehicles, and coordinated aerial sweeps to detect body heat or movement at night. On the ground, search parties conducted grid-style combing across sectors, working panels of terrain in parallel. Aboriginal trackers and specialist field search coordinators helped interpret subtle signs, broken twigs, faint tracks, animal trails. By that phase, authorities reported over 470 square kilometers, or about 47,000 hectares, had already been searched without producing confirmed evidence of Gus. To put in perspective, Commissioner Grant Stevens likened it to scouring 100 Adelaide CBDs. One of the most talked-about leads was a small boot print discovered near a dam about 5.5 kilometres west of the homestead on 6 October, which initially drew attention. Earlier, another footprint pattern was found 500 meters north of the station that matched the style of Gus's footwear, but police later acknowledged it could have been there before his disappearance and was unrelated. Ultimately, the boot print near the dam was ruled out after forensic review. Investigators concluded it did not belong to him and did not lead to further trace evidence. These dead ends added urgency. Even promising clues failed to pan out, forcing teams to reassess search zones and strategies. While institutional resources grew, the human element remained central. Farmers drove long distances, local shearers walked fence lines at dusk, and families spent countless hours scanning gullies and gullies. Many spoke publicly about a sense of duty to a little boy they had never met. In Peterborough, residents held vigils, left lights on in houses overnight, and made homemade posters. One local, Pat, said, "They can only imagine those first nights out there in the cold." Friends of the Lamont family publicly pleaded against conspiracy theories swirling online, admonishing how false speculation added to the trauma of a devastated family. Fleur Tyver, a longtime friend, asked for restraint, citing the family's character and urging focus on verified facts. As the days wore on with no breakthrough, morale was strained, yet many volunteers returned repeatedly, driven by empathy more than hope. In places so vast, every new volunteer brought fresh eyes, and in such landscapes, even small signals may matter. In the days following Gus Lamont's disappearance, the investigation evolved beyond pure searching. Detectives, specialists, and analysts began probing every plausible scenario, always weighed against the stark reality of the terrain and the sparse evidence. From early on, South Australia police stated their working assumption. Gus likely wandered away from the homestead, disoriented, caught in the harsh conditions. In their 7 October 2025 public statement, Assistant Commissioner Ian Parrott affirmed that Gus was seen at 5 p.m. playing by his grandmother, and by 5:30 p.m. he was gone, and that he wandered off from the Oak Park Station, homestead. The decision to treat the case as a recovery operation was guided by medical advice, based on expert assessments about how long a child might survive under exposure in that environment. Police began preparing the family for the possibility that Gus may not have survived the elements. Survival specialists and search planners used models factoring distance, heat exposure, dehydration, and possible disorientation. Because Gus was a good walker per family reports, there's a possibility he ventured further than expected. Nevertheless, even though the wander-off theory is the primary line, it's not without significant challenges. After more than 10 days of intensive searching over 470 kilometres, no trace, no hat, clothing, or distinctive tracks has been conclusively linked to Gus. Some former detectives and commentators have suggested that wildlife or environmental hazards in the region could play a role. The remote, arid terrain hosts snakes, reptiles, feral animals, and other dangers. However, no concrete evidence has surfaced to support this. There has been no confirmed animal attack, no signs of a struggle, and none of the missing items have been found. This theory remains speculative, one of several possibilities being considered. While police emphasize there is no evidence to suggest foul play at this time, they haven't ruled it out entirely. In establishing Taskforce Horizon, they noted their obligation to consider all possibilities as the investigation continues. Ex-detective Gary Jubilin has publicly stated that, given the child's age and the remote location, possibly a combination of factors or human involvement cannot be excluded. One complicating factor is the circulation of misinformation and AI-generated images. For instance, a fake image claiming Gus was being taken by a man has been widely shared online. Authorities say such fabrications have diverted attention and resources. These false leads make it harder to parse credible tips from noise. In at least one instance, viral posts claimed a child resembling Gus had been seen with a man in a car 100 kilometers from Yunta, but that image was later exposed as AI-generated. Understanding how the elements affect a child in such terrain is vital. Search planners used medical expertise and survival projections to judge how long Gus might have endured exposure, heat, dehydration, or shock. This assessment encouraged authorities to shift to a recovery mindset after around 48 hours of no confirmed signs. The terrain is punishing. Daytime temperatures, exposed scrubland, limited shade, potential for snakes or other animals, and water scarcity. A 4-year-old without shelter or water would face rapid dehydration, heat stroke, disorientation, and vulnerability to exposure. Because none of Gus's clothing, hat, or personal effects have been located, reconstructing his likely path or direction is exceedingly difficult. The absence of extended, clear footprints is particularly troublesome. If he had ventured a fair distance, more trace evidence would typically exist under such conditions. Some volunteers and former SES searchers have even questioned whether he was ever off the immediate property. For instance, a former SES volunteer named Jason O'Connell, after 90 hours of searching Oak Park Station, claimed there was zero evidence that Gus had ever left the station boundaries. In October 2025, South Australia Police announced the formation of Taskforce Horizon, a dedicated investigative body charged with coordinating all facets of the Gus Lamont case. Taskforce Horizon comprises roughly 12 specialist officers and analysts, including search coordinators, medical and survival experts, data analysts, and field intelligence personnel. Their primary task: to integrate search operations, satellite and aerial imagery review, forensic leads, and public tips in a cohesive framework. While the initial intensive search phase had been scaled back, authorities emphasized that the renewed expansion in search zones was not prompted by a new tip, but rather by expert survival mapping and probabilistic modeling, essentially using scientific projections to guide where to look next. Simultaneously, the investigation's oversight shifted. The case was formally transferred into the Missing Persons Investigation section within the Major Crime Investigation branch, placing it on a long-term investigative footing. Today, Taskforce Horizon continues to reassess all previously searched areas, cross-reference satellite imagery, past and present, analyze drone data, and vet more than 150 Crime Stoppers tips already lodged. In remarks to the media, Commissioner Grant Stevens reiterated the nature of the operation, a recovery mission, not a rescue effort, given the elapsed time and uncertainties. He also warned that extreme heat, forecast to reach up to 36 degrees, would likely constrain ground search to cooler morning windows. For now, there is still no evidence of foul play. Yet, investigators stress there is an obligation to entertain all possibilities, including those that may not yet be substantiated. The disappearance of Gus Lamont has left a mark far beyond the fences of Oak Park Station. In Yunta, a town of barely 60 people, locals who once gathered for quiet weekends now meet in silence, scanning the horizon each morning, hoping for a sign that never came. Shops along the barrier highway placed handmade posters in their windows. Farmers kept their UHF radios on for updates. At the Yunta Hotel, conversations always circle back to the same question. How can a child vanish in open land with nowhere to hide? Across Australia, the case has reopened old wounds, reminders of Cleo Smith, found alive in Western Australia after 18 days in 2021, and William Tyrrell, still missing from New South Wales more than a decade later. Each story tests the public's faith in answers, in rescue, and in justice. For the Lamont family, the waiting has become its own kind of grief. Neither closure nor clarity, only the ache of unanswered days. Friends describe them as strong, quiet people who've endured the glare of national attention while holding on to dignity and hope. Among volunteers and police, the feeling is the same, a fragile balance between heartbreak and resolve. Searchers say you can't walk that land without thinking of Gus, or of how easily life can slip into the vast silence of the Outback. What do you think happened to Gus Lamont? Was this a tragic case of a child lost in the Outback, or something more? Let me know your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more verified, fact-based true crime documentaries from Australia's hidden corners.